What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In the last video, I got the new ACT clutch and flywheel installed on the Evo. I was also able to get the transmission back up in the engine bay and reinstalled. And then I finished up with getting the transfer case reconnected to the transmission, the subframe back up and reconnected, and then all of the transmission mounts that I had to take out. The clutch feels really good. I still have to get both of the wheel assemblies and axle assemblies back together on both sides. Before I install the axles though, I am going to be replacing the grease on the inner joint as well as the clamps on the boot. Once the axles are installed, I can start replacing the transmission fluid as well as the transfer case fluid, and then I will get everything reconnected up top and I will be done with this clutch install. Stay tuned. If you didn't see the last video, definitely go check it out. It's me installing the new ACT clutch and flywheel. This is the old OEM one. I obviously have not been able to actually drive the car yet, but the clutch feel from the inside feels really good. I still have to put together the wheel hub assemblies here and all of the axle stuff. When I originally bought the car, there were zip ties on these inner boots right here. They had been leaking for a little while and you could see grease flung all up in there. I cleaned most of that out, everything that I could get to, and then I replaced the ones that were actually leaking. The problem is I don't know how much grease actually leaked out. So I'm gonna pop these two ties off here. I'm gonna see how much grease is in there. If it still seems to be a decent amount, I may just leave it alone. If there's not enough, or if it looks nasty or milky in any way, I'm gonna go ahead and replace it. It would be nice to just pop these things right back in there without having to do anything. But I don't want any issues down the road, so it'll be worth it to take these things apart if I have to. Let's pop these things open and see what's inside. CV joints are all taken apart and cleaned up. You can see here the difference in the different clamps that I have. These are the OEM ones, and the OEM little ones look just the same. They're very flimsy, very thin. They're the type that have the little band at the end. You pull it tight and then clamp it down. These are the ones that I replaced it with. I like these a whole lot better. You just wrap it around, you hook your hooks in, and then you have a little tool to crimp that and it tightens it up. Once you get the clamps off, you can separate the boot. On the end, there will be this little C-clip that's holding it on right here. Then you can slide this little needle bearing attachment right off. After that, you can slide the whole boot off. I cleaned everything up with just gasoline. It cuts right through the grease, then you just have to use a rag to wipe it all out. These boots on the inner side were really hard to get to. I've been working on them for a little while. I just want to make sure I have everything good and clean before I put them back together. After I got all of the grease off and the gasoline on the parts and then on the little cups right here, I did take them over to the power washer and clean them off with some water. And then I just used some compressed air to blow all the water out of there. Everything down here on the towel is actually ready to go. I'm still going to work on the cups a little bit to make sure I get all of the grease out of there. And as soon as I'm finished off with those, I'll start putting them back together. Both axles are completely put back together with new clamps and new grease. This is the grease that I used. It's this Redline CV2. From my understanding, this red moly is supposed to be really, really good. It stands up to much higher temperatures and loads. But a couple of guys on the forums said that they were using this in their axles for their race applications, so it should be really good for everyday driving. I just set the tub on top of my little scale here, and I just measured out every time I took a spoonful, and I put exactly 4 ounces into each cup. After that, you just throw the needle bearing assembly into that cup of grease and then pull your boot over and tighten the clamps down. Now that both axles are ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and start putting the driver's side back together. I need to clean the seals on both sides really good. After that, I should just be able to pop my axles in there, get those circlips seated, and then I can get this whole assembly back together. Axles are back in on both sides and wheel and hub assemblies are back together. I cleaned the seals really good with some brake clean just to get any kind of dirt and grime off of there. I want to make sure that I don't have any leaks, and then I just put a little bit of regular motor oil on there. It should allow that seal to seat a little bit better. You push the connecting rod in first, give it a little tap with the hammer, and it should allow that circlip to seat. After that, I got the axle up on there. I did end up having to remove the coil over to get enough room. It was too much at an angle and I could not get a straight hit on it with that hammer. It really wasn't that big of a deal. It's just 3 nuts up top and that thing drops out of there. I used my jack just to get on the bottom of the rotor right here. I jacked it up just high enough to get all of this fitted in here, get these bolts in, and then I tighten the nuts down on the other side. After that, it's 4 12mm bolts, so one on the back here holding this big bracket on, one for this small bracket back here, this one right here holding this bracket on, and then this one right here holding the soft line for the brake cable. Last is the axle nut. It gets torqued down to 160 foot-pounds plus or minus a little bit. You just have to get the holes lined up for the cotter pin to go in. Passenger side is pretty much the exact same. I got lucky when I pulled the axle out and the little connecting rod came with it, so I only had to pop one circlip in there. All the bolts and everything are exactly the same though. Now that the axles are back in, I've got a few other things to tidy up top, and this clutch install will be complete, and then I can finally start focusing on the new turbo back here. I'm not going to put any of this back together just yet. Having this off is going to make it a lot easier to get that new turbo in there. I'm just going to get everything reconnected for the actual transmission. There's a couple of plugs down here, and then the bracket for the slave cylinder. I want to get the shifter cables back and reconnected, and then I want to refill the transfer case and the transmission with fluid and check for any leaks. Everything is reconnected up top for the transmission. Like I said, the battery and ECU stuff I'm gonna leave disconnected right now. I got the shifter cables reconnected back here. I already tested them out to make sure everything works just fine. There's 2 plugs up top I got reconnected, and then the little bracket over here holding them in. For the transmission fluid, I'm using the Redline Cocktail. I know a lot of guys run this in the 5 speeds and they claim it works really well. So it's 1 bottle of MT90, 1 full bottle of MTL, and then another 0.6 of the other MTL. Picked up this little hand pump from Harbor Freight. I grabbed a couple of them because I didn't know how hard they were going to be able to clean. I only ended up using 1. The only thing is the little attachments that they come with, they actually don't fit down inside of the bottles. I had some spare tubing laying around, and luckily the end right here connected on there perfectly. Just cut it to length, and then I was able to drop it down in there. One thing to note though is when I was actually pumping this in there, on the last bottle of MTL here, it was not pouring over when I was pumping it in. I actually got the whole bottle in there and there was nothing actually draining out of the drain hole. I took a step back and had to think about it for a minute, and then realized that the car was still up on jack stands. One of the things that I did off camera that I didn't show was I did have to put my jack underneath the differential in the back here to jack it up to level out the car so that it would allow that fluid to drain out of the transmission. Once it quit dripping, I put my bolt back in and tightened it down. For the transfer case, it's the Mitsubishi SAE90 Gear oil. Same thing with the car, just make sure that it is level on both sides. Once that was done draining, I popped the bolt back in there, tightened it down. Everything is now completely finished as far as the clutch goes. Now I can start focusing on getting the new turbo and manifold in here. Pulled the OEM one out a little over a month ago. I really wanted to go ahead and put the new ones in, but I knew this thing was going to be needing a new clutch soon. This new manifold and turbo are going to look so good in there, not to mention perform even better. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button. If it helped you out in any way, definitely smash that like button. If you want to see more going on with the Evo and the turbo and manifold going on, hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you guys next time.